I was just talking to a friend of mine and he had stopped at the local laundromat. The place was packed. And he's like, this place was a junk hole and it was full of people. He said, man, we should probably build a laundromat. Ever since a little kid, I thought laundromat was like the coolest idea. No one's there except for people putting quarters in the face of these machines. So it's got to make money. And as I continued to look around and talk to folks and find out more about laundry business, I found out one thing for sure. And that was that no one wanted to share the facts.
Welcome to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association, providing benefits and services to real estate investors and rental property owners for over 48 years. With your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group.
This episode is sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And RCB and Associates, helping real estate investors and small business owners navigate the complex world of health insurance and Medicare benefits at rcbassociatesllc.com. Hello and welcome to episode 269. My guest today has spent the last few years building and acquiring small businesses and real estate investments to create diversified income streams. He's invested in franchises, hair salons, laundromats, short-term rentals, car washes, and other assets we normally don't talk about on this show. Luckily, he's been documenting these experimental investments along the way and will be sharing the details with us today. Keith Leimbach has served as COO and CEO of several companies, and he spent 30 years in the corporate world. He served on a U.S. Presidential Advisory Committee, and he also hosts the Diversified Income Experiment Podcast. Keith, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Brian. Hello, all the listeners. Hope you guys enjoy the show today.
I'm going to enjoy it because I do not think that we have ever talked about on this show car washes, laundromats, hair salons.
How can you miss out on those three great opportunities, man? They are classic, just straight up the middle American businesses, man. That's like meatloaf and potatoes.
Well, we haven't had anyone on the show like you to tell us about it.
I'm glad to be here.
But before we go there, just tell us a little bit about yourself, Keith.
Your intro was right on, man. I spent 30 years in the corporate world, and what I always thought I wanted to be was a CEO. And then I became a CEO and realized, wait, what? Oh, is this what I've been looking for the last 30 years? It wasn't. The last 25 years. And then when I left the corporate world, I found what I really wanted to do, and what I had confused throughout the years was being a CEO with being an entrepreneur. And I love being an entrepreneur. I think it's really a great fit. And one of my old mentors when I was in the corporate world, even after I'd become a CEO, he'd said to me, dude, you're a hustler. Like, why do you want to be a corporate leader? I'm like, I don't know. What do you mean by like being a hustler? And he basically described an entrepreneur to me. And I knew, like from when I was a little kid, what I wanted to be was an entrepreneur. I just got myself confused. And during that corporate stuff, I know that I wanted to be an entrepreneur because I kept going out and doing entrepreneurial stuff. And some of that was real estate. And I bought, when I was probably 5 years, less than that. I was probably 3 or 4 years out of college. I started an investment group with two other buddies that I'd got to know through corporate work. And we started this thing called SLS Investment Group, which was just our last name initials put together. And we started buying property in the Dallas-Fort Worth area off of HUD listings. And we were able to buy these homes for $5,000 and put another 5 or 10 into them to clean them up. And they would all appraise for $33,000, like every one of them. And we thought, oh my God, we figured it out, man. We're going to make $1 zillion. And then we realized we couldn't rent them because we bought them all in the wrong neighborhood. When we did find a renter, they would do all kinds of damage and steal the air conditioner after 5 months. Then we had 3 months of work to do to get it back on the market. And we were losing cash the whole time. And we didn't know how to sell them. And so that was really my first real foray into real estate. And in that same time, we bought some land in Southern Colorado and held on to that for 5 or 6 years. It never appreciated, and we sold it basically what we bought it for. But we did buy a place in North Tahoe, in Incline Village. If you can believe this, in the early 90s, we bought a place in Incline Village right across the street from the lake. And we paid $125,000 for a 3-bedroom condo. And now that same condo sells for, I don't know, $1 million and change. Literally, I was up there a while ago and I stopped by that old place to show my wife where I used to own this little this little condo, and we stumbled across a for sale sign, and it was like $1 million. I'm like, why did I sell it? I sold it for 150 grand and thought I made all the money in the world.
That's always painful. I know I look back at some properties that I either sold or passed up buying at a good price, and now they're worth 3, 4, 5 times as much.
Yeah, I'll tell you one other quick story. I lived in Manhattan Beach for a long time and in Southern California. And the house that I rented a room in, it was basically the bottom level. It's called the garden unit. It was a nice way of saying in the basement. Not really basement because it was Manhattan Beach, but it was a lower level. It was kind of half underground, whatever. And the lady approached me one day. She said, "Hey, I'm going to go live back in my house in Malibu. Do you want to buy this house from me?" And it was on a walk street, Manhattan Beach, on 17th Street. And just a fantastic place. And I said, I don't have any money. How much are you selling it for? It's 400 grand. And then a year later, I didn't buy it. A year later, I went back and it was for sale again. And it was for sale for $1 million. And in a year, I could have made $600,000. And then I realized, holy crap, man, that's why there are people living in big homes and driving nice cars, and I'm not. And I want to be. So maybe I need to be doing more in real estate.
So Keith, what brought you around to diversifying your income streams outside of the typical rental property? What got you into franchises, car washes, laundromats, that sort of thing?
Well, when I left the corporate world a little over 3 years ago, I knew that I still wanted to do something instead of sit around all day. And so I was just talking to a friend of mine, and he had I think he'd just taken his son or daughter to college, and he'd stop at the local laundromat. The place was packed, and he's like, this place was a junk hole, and it was full of people. He said, "Man, we should probably build a laundromat." And I said, "I don't know, man, a laundromat. I love ever since a little kid, I thought laundromat was like the coolest idea. No one's there except for people putting quarters in the face of these machines. So it's got to make money." But I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know if I want to make laundromats. So anyway, I did a Google search, and, I found a few financial models, and they were all mostly make-believe stuff, known from a real operation. But it showed that, you can make pretty good money. And I knew they probably weren't accurate. And as I continued to look around and talk to folks and find out more about laundry business, I found out one thing for sure, and that was that no one wanted to share the facts. And so that, if you fast forward now, that's why I share it all on the Diversified Income Experiment Podcast. But at that time, there was no information. And I had a buddy that owned a few car washes. And so I talked to him, and he said, "Yeah, the car wash model is fantastic, man. Actually sent me his financial model from real stores." And so I'm like, okay, now I understand why people love car washes so much. These things make tons and tons of money. And same with the salon suites, similar concept. A salon suite is, if you typically, like if you go into your local day spa or hair salon or whatever they're all fancy called now these days, most of those folks are renting a chair. They're not an employee. They just rent a chair. And in a little fancier one, they might rent a little booth or something. But in a salon suite, you're acquiring maybe 5,000 square feet of space, leasing it. You can buy it too, but you lease it and then cut it up into 100 or 200 or 300 square foot little mini suites, and then you rent those suites out to practitioners, whether they're in the salon and hair business. They might be in the nails, could be a chiropractor, all kinds of applications. But then I started looking at these different business models, and I thought, wow, these are kind of straight up the middle. Like I said before, the classic American businesses. I think I'd like to give a try at owning a couple. And so the first one I launched into were the laundromats, and I have 4 of them today. And I'm happy to talk through about the details of them. They're very, very interesting business, but you got to kind of know what you're getting into. It's not as easy as finding a store and loading it up full of machines and start collecting quarters.
Yeah, well, I'd love to go into detail on all those asset classes you just mentioned, and I think the laundromat is the perfect place to start. First of all, tell us the pros. Why would you either build or invest in a laundromat?
Well, as lots of your guests talk about, man, you got to think about the long game. All these scammers on YouTube, they're talking about making $1 million in the next week or building this business that's going to, create an empire. But, maybe there are folks that do that, but not very many. And so what I like to think about is, let's say, you're like me when I started this in my early 50s, or let's say you're in your 40s or your 30s, and one laundromat net after debt. So let's say you've paid off the debt. Like, let's just fast forward. A laundromat's probably going to make you $250,000 a year net, right? No debt. If you have debt, you might consume the lion's share of that in paying it down. So maybe you make little or nothing in the first few years. Most laundromat are financed over 7 years, like the equipment. So, you create a tremendous long-term asset that is producing a reliable cash flow with very little management. And I run my laundromats absolutely straight up on the books. I'm not paying people under the table or taking money out of the back of the change machines and stuffing it in my pocket. But, a lot of people talk about that as a cash business, and maybe there's a way around the IRS. I don't advocate that at all. But, you hear that kind of as the common top line thing when people talk about laundromats. I'm telling you that it's about having a great long-term, reliable, pretty low effort cash flow machine. And if you can start one of them, then, it's just about accessing funds. You can start another one. And if you can have 3 or 4 in the same general community area, now you've got enough going on there that you can hire a manager to run that for you, as well as consolidate, funds across those 3 or 4 businesses in that community to do marketing. And so a really, really great business to be able to scale. And listen, if you want to build 100 of them, knock yourself out. But if you're going to make $200,000 net off of each one, and you got 3 of them, like, how much money do you need when you're retired? $600,000 a year, pretty good gig if you're just laying around playing golf.
How should we think about a laundromat when it comes to income? With rental apartments or multifamily, we think about our cost and income per door, or per unit. I know in self-storage, we think about it as cost and income per square foot. With a laundromat, how do you look at it from that perspective?
Yeah, laundromats are turns per day. So just like in a restaurant, how many people are coming in, sitting down at a table, how much are they spending? And then how many people can you put at that same table throughout the day? In a laundromat, it's about how many times can I make those machines run in a day to generate revenue. And the industry average is 4 turns per day. So the math is really easy to figure out top line revenue. If you've got, let's say you've got 50 washers, and then you've got the equivalent capacity in dryers. So, a washer, let's say you charge $8, and that washer ought to do 4 turns a day. That's $32 for that machine. And you've got 50 of them. So 50 times 32 is what, $1,500 or something, or 15,000, or not 1,500. I don't know. I haven't done the math. $1,500, right? So that's what those machines ought to do for you in a day, times 30 days in a month, times 12 months in a year, right? You can do the top line math pretty fast.
So let's break that down here. So you're saying about 30 machines or 30 sets of washers and dryers?
So let's only talk about washers first. Mm-hmm. And a washer ought to do 4 turns a day. And so if your washer, if it takes $8 to start that washer, washers come in different sizes.
Yeah, when you're saying $8, I'm used to like the $1.25, $1.50.
Yeah, so there's little washers, and typically you go into an older laundromat, they've got those top loaders, which are super inefficient. They don't wash your clothes very well, and they're very, very dated technology. No new laundromat uses top-loading washers. Everything's a front-loading washer, super efficient to operate and super effective in terms of cleaning your clothes. And if you have like our 20-pound washers, that's the smallest washer typically in a laundromat. Those we charge $275. You stair step it all the way up to an 80-pound machine. You can literally put 80 pounds of laundry. It's a beast, and that thing's $9, $9 a load, right? So I just pick a number. You can pick any number you want, and as you build out your laundromat, you're going to have, let's say you've got 50 washers in there. You're probably going to have, you're going to have a mix of 20s, maybe a few 40 pounds, maybe a few 60s, and a few 80 pound laundry machines.
So in a way, it's kind of like having different size units, a studio size, a 1 bedroom,
exactly.
2 bedroom. What size are you going to get and how much you're going to charge for it?
Exactly. And it's been a long time since you've been in a laundromat, man. If you're talking about a bucket machine, come on.
Well, I'm thinking about the laundry rooms we have at some of my apartments where we're charging, under $2 a load.
Yeah. Now that's a different deal. In your laundromats, you're in your laundry rooms in your apartments, you probably have top loader washers.
Probably.
Yeah. And those are junk, man. You need to replace those and put nice washers
I'm actually in the process of replacing one of my laundry rooms. So I'm getting.
And when you do that, you'll find that people will pay a little more money too, because just by looking at them, you know that they're more sturdy. I mean, you have to latch the door to get it to close. It's just a hardier machine, and they're there for commercial operation. It's not like, you went to Home Depot and bought the Maytag thing and put it in your laundry room in your house or in your apartment. And so you're right. And that, similar to whether you have a studio or 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, or something bigger, the prices vary as you get bigger in the machines.
Sounds like it's conceivable that if you're making $1,500 a day, $45,000 a year, that's about $500,000 in gross income that we're looking at per laundromat. Is that in the ballpark?
It is, for the numbers that we talked about. But remember, we haven't talked about dryers yet, and we also are talking about stores that have 50 machines. That's a pretty big store.
Okay.
So I've got 3 stores, and then a 4th one that is a bit of an anomaly. It's on a military base, so that's a separate deal. But for my 3 stores, in one of them I have like 33 washers in it. So the math's a little bit different. And then in the 2 bigger stores, one is 5,500 square feet. Right? That's a big store, and I have 50 washers in there, and I have capacity to add another 20 when I get those to the right turns per day. So you can scale the business, as well. You don't have to go all in right up front. Like if you find a great piece of real estate in a laundromat demographic area, you can start small and add machines as you fill them up. You just pre-wire it all, pre-plumb it all to be able to do that. But yeah, your math is the same. 4 turns a day times however many machines you have times whatever you charge for those machines. And then dryers, we generally model at 30% of the washer revenue. So if you're doing, let's say easy numbers, if you're doing $10,000 a month in washers, you're going to do $3,000 a month in dryers.
I'd like to take a moment to tell you about Green Property Management. Not only do they manage everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area, they also manage my entire portfolio. So I can tell you from personal experience that their unique flat fee management style is worth a closer look. If you feel that your property isn't operating to its fullest potential, then Green Property Management can help you take a holistic approach that will save you money, eliminate your headaches, and increase your net income. And if you're a property manager interested in applying Green Property Management's model, give them a call at 1-866-95-GREEN or visit them on the web at greenpropertymgt.com. If you're thinking of leaving your W-2 job and becoming a full-time real estate investor, one of the greatest costs you must consider is healthcare for you and your family. When I made this transition myself, I found the whole healthcare insurance process to be confusing and frustrating. That's why I'm glad I met Chad Creasy at RCB & Associates. Chad is a professional health insurance agent who helps real estate investors and small business owners understand and choose their best healthcare options. And best of all, his services are covered by the insurance company and won't cost you a dime. If you live in Michigan and are expecting a change in your healthcare insurance coverage for any reason, or losing employer coverage or transitioning into Medicare, then you owe it to yourself to contact Chad Creasy at rcbassociatesllc.com. I noticed that on some of my laundromat statements that we get from our vendor that provides the machines and collects the money. I noticed there's a huge drop off in the income from the dryers. And that doesn't make any sense to me. Why is that?
Well, it's a really interesting question. So when you think about how you pay for dryers, a quarter buys you a certain number of minutes, and it only takes so many minutes to dry your clothes. When if you were to try to approach this from a blank slate, like you and I have never been to a laundromat in our lifetime, you'd look at 2 things. And you're just trying to price them. You'd look at what does it cost you to run a dryer versus a washer, and then you'd try to make money from the markup, I guess, if you looked at it that way. And the second is, what is the value of it? You're probably not going to sit in the sink at your house and wash your clothes, right? A washing machine's got a lot of value. A dryer, it's a convenience kind of deal, but if it was really expensive, you'd probably just take them home and hang them on the line, as long as it's not winter out or you live downtown Manhattan. So I think that's probably why. I mean, you could probably end up charging more, but you also, if you're putting a quarter in the face of the machine and you're getting 7 or 8 minutes worth of time, if you put 30 pounds of laundry in there, you're probably going to have it clean. I mean, you're probably going to have it dry in, how long does your dryer run? 30 or 40 minutes. So a quarter could buy you 8 minutes. You could set it up so a quarter buys you 2 minutes. But, because all the competitors are set up so that a quarter buys you 7 or 8 minutes, you got to kind of be in that ballpark. I built really, really beautiful, just fantastic facilities. I mean, these are nicer than most people's homes. So people love to go there, and we love to have them, and we love having a great service for the community. And so I charge a little bit more. And when people tell me, hey, why does a quarter only buy me 6 minutes? I can get 9 minutes at, the gross dump down the street. I tell you, go take your crap to the gross dump down the street. You're not going to go there. The reason you're here is because it's nice, and you're going to pay to do that. And so, but why is it 30%, not 50? I don't know.
I appreciate that you're telling us the laundry or the dryer income is going to be about 30% of what the washer income is.
Yeah.
What about the expense ratio? Because you're paying for the electric, the water, the sewer, all that. And then, of course, the overhead of the building. How does that usually factor into your numbers?
So utilities are going to run you, between 15 and 20% of revenue from the machines. And if you have brand new machines, man, I mean, this all stuff is manufactured now to be hyper efficient. And depending on what your utility rates are, you might be, 14 or 15%. And if you're in a really expensive utility area using brand new machines, maybe you're running at 18, 19, man, I'd be really hard pressed to tell you're going to find any new laundromat that's running utilities at 20% of, but it also depends on what you're charging. Like if you're only charging $3 for a machine and I'm charging $6 for a machine, obviously utilities are going to be a higher percentage of revenue. But in a kind of a traditional model, everything priced right in the market works. You're probably at, if you're going to model it, I'd model it at 18%.
That's utilities, water, sewer. And then, of course, you've got the cost of the property and the property taxes, things like that. Outside of the debt service, what is your typical expense ratio when you consider everything?
So my expenses are 62% of gross. Yeah, we're running 38% net. Net margin is what, a store is probably going to run at, in that ballpark. You could plan it on the low end at 25 or 30% net, but I mean, that's a fabulous return.
So the expense ratio is actually a little higher than what you'd experience in like a multifamily apartments, where it's usually between 50 to 60%.
Okay. That's interesting.
In self-storage, the expense ratios, I've seen it in the 35% range. What accounts for that being higher? Because if your utilities are in that 18 to 20% of your gross, what accounts for the rest of it?
Remember, these stores are all new within the last 3 years. And so I'm ramping up. And there's a ramp rate to this business. When you think about a rental on an apartment, you put the sign out, somebody rents it, and it's going to rent for $1,000 this year, and it's going to rent for, a little over 1,000 next year, probably. As you ramp up a laundromat, you've got to get people to know you're there. You got to have people decide they're going to leave where they do laundry today and do it with you. And that all takes time to get the business to ramp up. So when I say that our expenses as a percentage of revenue are at 62%, that's in the ramp years. When I'm looking in my model for the out years, we run at 51%. So it's more in line with some of the other investments you're talking about. But that's the other thing about laundromats. You mentioned to ask me about the pros. When you think about the cons, there's a ramp cycle to this, and it's gonna take you a while, and not always as fast as what you would hope for. That's for sure. And especially when you're writing checks during that period as the business ramps. That's a little bit different than a real estate deal where, hopefully you build the place, you get it rented out. And then, as long as your expenses stay in line, you still have the right revenue stream. And that's the thing that's different in the laundromat business, is having the patience to get to run rate.
Thanks for explaining that. Are your laundromats fully automated, or do you have to have people on staff?
Yeah, we always have somebody there. We're open 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., kind of standard laundromat schedule. And I have staff there at every hour that we're open.
I'd imagine that payroll adds to the expense ratio considerably as well.
Yeah. So let's talk about those expenses. That's what you'd asked. The 31% of revenue is payroll. And so it's, that's a pretty big line item. Utilities at 18%, rent at 12%, run advertising and marketing at 5 to 6%. And then I have a regional manager that the way we set up the comp, it'll end up being probably 8 to 10% of the total.
I love the breakdown. Thank you. That's great info. I want to go on to the other asset classes that we talked about, but I can't pass up the laundromat conversation because I'm in the process of fitting out a laundry room that I have in one of my apartments. So I'd love your recommendation on what you like for washers and dryers.
I would look at the apartments and see, are they mostly studio 1 bedrooms, or do you have bigger units where people would have families and more laundry?
Studio 1 and 2 bedrooms.
So you probably want some 20-pound machines in there, because folks with the studio are going to look for a place to wash their, they've got their person by themselves, right? How much laundry do you have in a week? 10 or 30 pounds, right? So you can use a 20-pound machine, maybe a couple of them to sort your whites and your darks, but you don't want to have them have only a 40 or 60-pound washer. It's too big for that person unless they're only doing laundry once a month. And then you got to go tell that slob, hey man, you got to do your laundry more often. But for the bigger families, someone in a 2-bedroom apartment, they might have, maybe they've got some kids and they're doing laundry. You probably need a 40, 60-pound machine. So depending on how many units are in there, I would say I would probably have, at least one 80-pound machine. That's a big machine. And then you can have 160. And then I'd probably put, 20 or 30-pound machines in there for the rest of it, probably 20-pound machines. And then you need to match capacity between washers and dryers. So just keep that in mind as you're putting your new equipment in there. If you have, just for math's sake, let's say you have 5 20-pound machines in there. That means at any given time, someone could be doing 100 pounds of laundry. The dryers are also measured in weight capacity. That's how capacity is measured. And so, if you had 2 50-pound dryers, you have the right capacity for 100 pounds of washer capacity. Does that make sense?
Okay, great. Thanks. And what brands do you like?
I use all Dexter stuff. Love the Dexter equipment. It's made in the USA. It is made out of Iowa. I've been with the guys that run the company. It's really solid management infrastructure, really good people, really sound business, and I like buying U.S. made stuff. And it's some awesome stuff, man. That brand new equipment. You can buy the machines now, like the dryer technology. You can buy stuff that spins at 200 Gs, right? That is going to get the water out of your clothes pretty fast, and cuts down on the dry time, lowers your utility spend. And for the most part, when you think about people putting quarters in the face of the machines or using their credit card or however they do it, they're used to spending 24 minutes or whatever. They know, I always put this much stuff in there. I always put 24 minutes. That's how many minutes I'm going to buy. So you're really not losing revenue. You're using a more efficient machine. I think it's kinder on the environment for sure. Doesn't cost you a whole lot in revenue. They're not that much more expensive, and they're pretty powerful machines. In fact, they're so powerful, the 200G machines you have to anchor. Here's a little laundromat trivia for you. You have to anchor those to the floor. On a 100G dryer, you can just set it on the floor, but a 200G machine, it's like a helicopter, man. I think it wants to take off and fly around the room.
You'll find it across the room if you're not careful. Right. Let's move on to hair salons, because that's another asset class or business that's always fascinated me, especially because of what you mentioned, where it's really a rental situation. You're renting out that chair, or that person working in that chair is renting it out from whoever owns that property.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So pretty much just as you described, the footprints that I look for are 5,000 plus square feet, and you're looking for Class A space. So you're going to pay some money for it. You might be spending $35 a foot.
And $35 a foot, is that to build it out?
No, that would be your lease rate. And then a build out, these are all, market sensitive, because what it costs to build in Seattle is different than what it costs to build in Kansas City. So all these things are kind of market dependent, but you should be able to build that space out for $130 to $200 a foot. I know that's a pretty wide range, but it depends on the market, and that would probably cover most markets. $130 a foot if you're trying to build in real Class A space in a grade A city. When I say grade A, that's not me grading them. That's just that's like Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York, Chicago. If you're in a kind of a B tier of Kansas, Denver, you can fill in the blanks, right? You might end up paying less, but getting the form function correct is really what drives the spend as much as the market. And what I mean by that is you have to make sure that you create a space that people are going to actually enjoy being in. And so imagine you're doing hair and nails in the space that you've leased, and the place next door is doing tattoos, and that place might have different music playing, and maybe it's louder than your salon, or vice versa, right? I'm not trying to stereotype one versus the other, but those are two different types of businesses, and one could be loud and one could be quiet, and maybe you've got places, even a day spa for like a massage, right? You don't want to hear music through the walls. So the point of all that is you have to build the space to accommodate the range of clients that you might have. And so instead of using chintzy drywall, you probably need, in some cases, sound absorbing drywall. And you could have certain suites that are designed, for those types of applications where someone needs a quieter space or someone needs a noisier space. You don't have to build it all like that, but you should also have ceilings that go all the way, walls that go all the way to the ceiling. I mean, it's these kinds of things, man. And like for your security system, let's say someone's not paying your bill. Oh, well, if your security system is designed just for the building overall, that doesn't account for how you're going to lock someone out of the suite when they haven't paid their rent. And so if you have individually locking suites with individual security systems that you can control at that level, those are more expensive, of course, but it gives you more control as a manager. Now, if you thought of yourself as an owner operator and you're going to be there every day and you're going to be the person taking care of it, then who cares, right? You don't have to worry about those types of things. But I'm trying to build stuff at scale. And so I'm trying to build for what is going to be easiest to manage, and in some cases manage remotely if needed. And the beautiful thing about salon suites is, maybe you're always going to have an on-site kind of receptionist / manager, and the management responsibility isn't all that significant, right? People come through the door, they want to know where to go. You greet them, make sure they have a good experience. They need to know that, suites 25 are this way and suites, 1 and 2 are over that, like whatever. It's not very management intensive, but those are the types of factors that are going to impact the build out costs for a salon suite.
It really seems like you have to take into account the experience that the client's going to respond to, which is why you're talking about soundproofing and that kind of thing. Do you have a designer that helps you? Yeah,
man, it's a great question. In this particular business, I decided to start smart, which was go find some people that had done this before and knew the answers and would be willing to share them, even in some cases for a fee. And it's kind of what I found in the laundromat business. There's a lot of people that are going to give you just enough information that makes it sound like it's really interesting or really scary, however they're oriented, but they're not really going to fill you in on the details that you need to know in order to make it really successful and work best for you. And so we worked with some folks that had some salon suites and, were really ready with the answers, and same with the car washes. But, you don't want to go build out one of these places. And let's say you're going to spend $200 a foot for easy math and 5,000 square feet. That's $1 million build out. And so if you're going to spend that kind of money, make sure you build it right. And that means, how wide should your halls be? Like, what kind of stuff is being pushed down those halls? If people are bringing equipment into their salon and they need their carts to be able to go down the halls to get, supplies in and out, it needs to accommodate that. And are you going to have a break room? Or is this just going to be a place where people work and there's no place for camaraderie between all the folks that are there? Is that important? Is there going to be community sense of feeling in that between all of the practitioners in the salon suite? That's a conscious decision you have to make up front, but something you might not consider. Because if all of a sudden you're going to make a break room and you're going to make a break room that's, I don't know, a comfortable break room, it's 20 by 10, 15 by 10, that's 150 feet, right? That's the same shape as a suite that you're going to rent for $325 a week. So, you got to design that stuff up front, know exactly how you're going to differentiate, because when folks are moving around, folks, I mean practitioners, let's talk about folks that are currently in a salon and they don't like renting a chair. There's too much drama. We hear it all the time. Oh gosh, I went to this salon, it's a beautiful place, and I loved working there until I found out that, Sally or Jim used to always, take my comb, or they're always talking. They talk so dang loud, I can't talk to my client, and all this kind of stuff. And then it's a drama. And, I'm always hearing about his girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever, blah, 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 blah. And so they're like, I just want my own place. I can do my own thing. I can set up my own program. And those practitioners come on board. Now, how are they going to differentiate between you and the other 8 gazillion salon suites? Because now they're a really popular asset. There's all these franchises that are starting up. And so, and have started, like Phoenix Salon and there's all these, there's tons of salon suite franchises. How are you going to differentiate? And it's those types of things, like a break room. Do you have plenty of great parking for people? Are you really in Class A space that they know they're going to draw the right clientele? That's not too far out of, people aren't going to drive very far to go. I'm not going to go drive 30 minutes to get my hair done. Right. And most people won't, if that's where their practitioner has been. It's been that close. Like the practitioner moves another 30 minutes away. They're probably not going to drive an hour. They're going to go find a different one.
So what are the economics then of a hair salon? Because it sounds like you are at $150 to $200 a square foot to build it out. Here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, you could build out some pretty nice townhomes or apartment units at 150 to 200 square foot. So I imagine these are very nice, like you say, Class A. What are the economics? If you spend that much to build it out, what size does it need to be, and how much do you need to be making off of each chair?
Think of it as suite, not chairs, because you're creating suites, and you can create, when you break out the floor plan, you're going to have to make a conscious decision of what types of clientele you think you're attracting, and whether those folks are going to want a single studio because they're going to be a sole practitioner, or whether they're going to need a little more space and they're going to have, maybe it's a chiropractor and it needs 2 tables. That's a little bit different setup than a one booth hair salon kind of deal. Or maybe, 1 station for nails or whatever. And you need to design that. And then typically, depending on your market, like in Grand Rapids, maybe you're going to be able to charge $250 a week for the rental of a single suite, which is going to be about 125 square feet. And you can have bigger suites for the bigger applications, and those, just scale accordingly. And if you think about the overall footprint of the building, 5,000 square feet, you're probably going to have 75% of it consumed with suites. The other 30% is going to be an entrance and hallways and a break room and bathrooms. And so then you can break down that 70 or 75% of the space into the suites that you're going to make. Just do the math, and then know that you're going to be able to charge. Listen, you can call in your community and find out. Just pretend like you're a chiropractor and you want to rent a suite, and anybody's going to tell you, whoever answers the phone, like that. When you call a salon suite, you'll get the receptionist up front, and part of that receptionist's job is to take leads for people that are calling, and she's probably armed with some basic information on what the rates are, right? And you can get that information. You'll know exactly what the top line math will be. And then these businesses run at about 50 to 55% expense load, consistent with the prior discussion with laundromats at 50%. You're probably going to run a little bit north of that. Just call it in the same ballpark, right? It's pretty compelling because you're paying for a manager, you're paying for utilities, and you're paying for the lease, right? Those are your expenses, and insurance, of course. And those are your expenses. There's not a whole lot to it. And then everything else is just subletting that space back out. There's obviously no cost associated with that.
When you compare the profit-making potential of a laundromat versus a hair salon, and also take into account just the amount of headache you have to deal with a hair salon, it seems like you have a lot more. You have tenants. You actually have tenants who are residing in those places during the business day, in those suites during the business day, versus a laundromat where people come and go, and you don't really have to deal with tenant complaints. What do you like better?
I'll give you 2 answers. The one I like better, I like laundromats. But that's my personal preference. You could talk to 10 people and get, 50-50 probably. The other answer I'd give you is that, that is my personal preference. And it really would depend on how other people respond. Like here's an example. Some people really like having space and the idea of having space in class A Class A buildings, really nice, very nice space. The clientele are folks that are paying $300 for, having their hair colored or their chiropractor or whatever. Right? They're spending a lot of money, and they're probably going to go across the street to the mall where, Nordstrom's charges you, $150 for a t-shirt, right? That kind of stuff. That's a different clientele. And also in the salon suite business, you're talking about folks that, you're renting to practitioners, right? You don't have customers per se, but you have clients. Those are your renters. In the laundromat business, I like providing the service to the community, and I don't really care that I'm in class F space, right? You're putting a laundromat in places, where laundromat customers primarily live, and it's a lower socioeconomic demographic. And so you're going to be in a strip mall somewhere, probably surrounded by apartments and not $1 million homes. I like being able to provide the service for folks. I think it's a great business, and I like to be part of the community that way. I do not like customers complaining to me in a laundromat. Like, I have a manager, right, that manages the laundromat, so it's not me so much anymore. But when I was ramping these up, I didn't have a manager, and I was the person down there. I was taking the phone calls, and person finds out their clothes got stolen by a homeless guy, right? That's not a cool conversation to have. And if you're not at the point where you're going to have a manager in that business and you're the person that's going to be taking those types of calls, you should just know that those are the types of situations that are going to occur. You're also going to have people break into your laundromats. I had a couple of break-ins just in the last month. One was the same building by the same people, thinking they could get away with it the second time around. They didn't get away with it either time. And I'll catch those guys. But, if you're worried about break-ins and you don't like the idea of an alarm sounding and the alarm company calling you at 4 a.m. because a water sensor went off, or the glass break sensor went off, and you've got a break in, and you want me to dispatch the fire department or the police or whatever, then, the laundromat's probably not a great fit for you. And when you do have managers, they manage that stuff for you. So think about the long game. But in salon suites, you don't have that problem, right? People aren't breaking into your Class A space to maybe they do, but it's not the same knucklehead.
There's just no money sitting there waiting to be.
Well, exactly. You can look through the window of the thing and know that, man, there's probably a bunch of quarters in those drawers, and there's not. But nonetheless, there is the illusion that there is potentially more capital laying around in a laundromat, and it's in an environment where I think probably bad guys would be more generally hanging out than in a Class A real estate next to Nordstrom's that probably has full-time security patrol in the area anyway. So anyway, there's some things you got to think about. You asked me strictly about the numbers, and if I were to say just on the numbers alone, I would absolutely do salon suites. But that's just the numbers, right? You got to worry about competition. You have to worry about where are you bringing those practitioners in from. And so if there are other salon suites in the area that you're thinking about creating salon suites because the math is so compelling, there are lots and lots of salon suites that are opening. In fact, so many salon suites that there are franchises. You can go to Phoenix salons, and I can't remember all the names of all the, but there's a bunch of different franchises out there. Why? Because they make lots of money, and people know that this is a very, very passive way to make income. You make a great return on cash. Now that I would imagine that the economy probably slows down. It has slowed down quite a bit with COVID and the pandemic. And because businesses are going out of business, you're going to have kinder landlords, and you're going to find out that the lease rates are going down, and what landlords are willing to invest back in terms of tenant improvement dollars is probably significantly more. And so trying to open salon suites over the last 3 years has been very, very difficult because, with the economy just blowing up, blowing in a positive way, landlords they're not ready to play ball. They don't have to, right? So lease rates are high and tenant improvement dollars are low. And when the economy turns around and it goes the other way and the lease rates go down and tenant improvement dollars go up, I think you're going to have a tremendous way to get into salon suites for much less money. And you think about capital out of pocket. If a landlord's going to give you $50 a foot, I've heard about folks, and I know some guys that own some salon suites down in Dallas, they got $100 per foot in TI dollars. If you can get the build done for 130, you've paid $30 a foot to build it out. I mean, it's almost free. And then the cash on cash return is incredible.
I want to move on to car washes and apply a lot of
Car washes are awesome.
Okay, good.
I get giddy when I talk about car washes.
Yeah, well, let's talk about it and let's apply some of the same parameters. Why does it make business and economic sense to invest in a car wash?
Well, let's just jump right to the numbers, man. Car washes make tons of dough. That's why. And when I look at I'm talking about ramp rate production kind of stuff, like let's look 5 years out in kind of a likely scenario. I've got a base case, a likely case, and a best case scenario. And EBITDA, just, essentially cash flow.
Yeah, explain that. That's EBITDA is not a term that we typically use on.
Okay, not a real estate term. So this is earnings. EBITDA stands for earnings before interest, depreciation, taxes, and amortization. So basically, it's cash, right? It's your earnings before you take all the other non-cash stuff out. Probably like NOI in a real estate model. A single car wash, should do over $1 million in cash flow, $1.2 million. And when you think about debt service, after debt service, a single car wash in my model is doing over $800,000. So, and these things are crushing it. They're absolutely awesome businesses when you think of it from that perspective now. But yeah, okay, Keith, I'd love to have a car wash. Who doesn't? How much do they cost to get into, right? And now you got the rub. So these run at about the same percentage at 48% expenses.
That's 48% expense ratio before the debt service.
Yeah, that's right.
And how do you look at it? Do you look at, is it like laundromats? You look at the number of turns. How many cars do you get through in a day?
Yeah. What are you charging per car? Like, what do you expect the average ARPU, revenue per unit, the units a car? What kind of revenue are you going to get per car that goes through that place? And then what is your expense load per car as well? And you're making some top line assumptions about what the monthly traffic is. But let me just give you some ideas here, because if you're in a let's say like Grand Rapids, man, you guys have some rough winters, get snowy, cars get totally dirty, and then 3 days later it's sunny out. And what's everybody do? They go to the car wash, and you go to get your car cleaned up. And most places even have a deal like, hey, if it snows sometime in the next week and your car's dirty, just bring it back for free, right? No one really cares because they're making so much money. It's just another gimmick to get you to go through the car wash and pay for the $19.95, car wash. You usually have different tiers of car wash. Like when you go, you get the basic deal. No one ever gets that because they put the tire cleaner in the next tier, and that's the one that you really want. And that's why you're there. And then if they're well run, they'll have a guy that comes up to your window with a little credit card reader, and he says, "Hey, which car wash do you want?" And you tell him, "Oh yeah, I want the premium. I don't think I need the premium plus deluxe." And he's like, "Oh, hey, listen, the premium plus but the deluxe. Trust me, the way this weather's been, you're going to want that mag-free stuff to get all that crud that's on the road, man. A little extra care there, $5 to you. Who cares? It could preserve your car." Right. And the guy's there selling the whole thing. And every time you go there, it's the same dude. And he tells you the same spiel, right? Those things make money, man. And when you run out the back end, then if you're running the type of long tunnel car wash that I'm talking about, 130-foot tunnel, you come out the back end, we have a super enormous blower that blows your car dry. And the reason I say super enormous is because the one that you're thinking about right now is the one that leaves your car dripping wet and you hate it. What we do is blow the thing like crazy, and you can then you have one guy standing out there, and he wipes off your mirrors, and he wipes off around the edge of your doors, and he wipes off your bumper, and you're gone. Right? As opposed to some of these other places, now you've got to have 25 felons standing out there drying your car, charging another $5 for a tip to get done. And those things are really, really, they have a huge cost basis, and they're difficult to run. You've got a lot of employees. They're all hourly employees. They're all part-time. And so they come and go super fast. You're constantly hiring and just keeping warm bodies back there. So I'm talking about a long tunnel, the huge blower, and one guy wiping off your mirrors when you're done, pats you on the tail, and you're off.
So you're investing more in the equipment and the setup So you don't have to spend as much on having part-time employees.
Yeah, for sure. That's the big deal.
I know car washes are your favorite and you're making the most off of that. What is the expense? Because I'd imagine it uses a lot of water, a lot of electric, just like a laundromat.
Yeah.
So how do the expenses break down?
Let's talk about expenses in two categories, because you got the operating expenses and but then you also have the startup expenses, and we can't miss out on that because that's pretty significant in a car wash as well, and probably the limiting factor. But we'll take one piece at a time. You're spending 18% on payroll, plus payroll tax. Call it 20% on payroll. You're at 7 to 10% in utilities, and then everything else, literally everything else, is nickel and diming you. So you've got some training expense. You've got store and office supplies. You've got security, communication system, makes your phone, but you want walkie-talkies between your guys so they can communicate between the front and the back. And if someone's, in the shop in the middle, you've got marketing, and you've got equipment and repairs, and maybe if you have more than one facility, you've got a truck that does maintenance and drives around between your various properties. You've got all your various taxes, right? And none of these are over 2 points, like 2 percentage points of total, but they're all adding up, man, because, by that time you get to the end, you're at 50%, and there's only a couple of them that are, above 2 points each. Why
is it that you make so much more money in a car wash than, say, a laundromat or a hair salon?
It's just a one-time deal. So if you think about, like, if you went through the brain damage of building 5 salon suites or 5 laundromats, that's the equivalent of one car wash. And so the math is about the same. To be able to do one project and be done with it, and then worry about ramping one facility and doing the marketing around one facility, and not trying to go through city planning and county planning and state regs to get plans approved. Laundromats put a lot of water back into, they use a lot of water, and they put a lot of water back into the waste department. And so, all utilities have to be planned and approved by the city. And it's just a long, expensive process. And on top of that, you have to design the place, and all those places, construction, right? Just like in a salon suite, it's not as utility intensive, but there's a lot of, it's a lot of work to get through city planning. Like in some communities, in Grand Rapids, for instance, how long does it take right now if you said, hey, I'm going to submit a set of plans to you, town of Grand Rapids, when can you get back to me with an approval? What's the timeline, do you know?
Well, you know what? It could be very quick if the zoning is already there and you can get staff approval, or it could take months, if not years, if you have to go through the process.
Right on. So in most cases, you're probably going to deal with at least a few zoning questions. And even if it's a few, like, questions are measured in weeks. They aren't measured in, I'm going to ask Brian, he's going to get back to me tomorrow. Like, questions are all weeks. And so on top of that, you're going to have just the approval process for the construction drawings. You got to get in a queue. And when you talk about bigger metropolitan areas, you can rely on a year. So let's say you're going to build one car wash. That approval process may take a year, but you're done with it. If you're going to build 5 laundromats, you've got a year for each of those. And if you're going to build 5 salon suites, you've probably got close to a year for each of those, right? It doesn't matter if it's super complex or super simple. Someone has to review the plans in detail and get through the queue of stuff that's already being built in the community, and the number of reviewers they have. I mean, it's just math, and the timeline is forever. And most city planning deals, if you called them right now and said, I'm going to submit some plans, how long to get through the total review process? You can call and get a ballpark information to see what's going to be in your community, but don't be surprised in some big metropolitan areas, it's a year. So that's why I say do a car wash. If you've got the capital, car washes, because of that, there's lots of places that have tons of capital, right? There's companies, private equity firms that are rolling these things up. There's lots of money out there. And so it's extremely competitive Right? I went through the process for 5 car washes that all failed in the planning process because I couldn't get the approvals that I needed from the city. And so each of those, has consumed part of a year. Each of those consumed tens and tens of thousands of dollars in developing the plans. Like, you don't just show up to city planning and go, hey, here's what I wrote on the back of a napkin. Right? You have to have an architect put everything on paper. That's expensive. You have to have a civil engineer do all of the civil engineering. You have to have MEP, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and all of that stuff done to submit it to the city. That's just to get it submitted. And then maybe the city says, nah, I don't really like the way the traffic's going to get backed up out of the back of your car wash, and it's going to impede with traffic flow on the road. It's going to cause a traffic accident. So you're going to have to change your whole traffic pattern. And then you're like, what? Like, I only got it 1.2 acres. And what, going to make it wrap around the building the other way? Yeah, if you want to put a car wash there, you're going to have to wrap. You're like, what? But the city has spoken, right? The city's not going to change their mind. And so anyway, super long process to go through. And that's why it's great to go through it once and not have to go through it a bunch of times.
That makes a lot of sense. There is a lot of headache and brain damage to getting through the city process. As we wrap it up here, Keith, you've given us just so much great information on laundromats, hair salons, car washes. What advice do you have for our listeners, whether it's about those who want to get started in that, why they should get started in that? I just give us to kind of wrap it up with a nice bow for us, will you?
Yeah, well, I would tell you for everybody listening, and you're listening because you find these topics interesting, whether it's, other aspects of real estate or these particular ones. I would tell you, man, just go do something. You're interested and you're doing the right thing. You're learning, and there is a whole bunch that you can learn from the internet. I'm happy to share all kinds of stuff with you as well. And you can get smart. Like, don't go build the wrong stuff, but also don't freeze. Don't analyze it to death to the point where you're not going to do anything. Right. So maybe a laundromat's not the right thing because I don't really like the idea of someone breaking into my store and then I got to do what? I got to deal with a police call. Right? That's okay. But Brian's got tons of other types of investments to do and different ways to enter those. And I would tell you, just go do something, man, because life is too short. And if you're listening to this because you're interested, it means by definition, you're interested, man. You want to go do something. So go do it and enter lightly if you want, or if you want to go make a big footprint, you think you understand the stuff, then go do it, or use a franchise to help you or whatever, man. But I would tell you to go do something, man, because life is too short. And I can tell you one thing for sure. Like, when I was a CEO, my last CEO deal, I ran a pretty big company, and it was a pretty visible job, and I made a lot of money, and I thought I checked all the boxes. Like, everybody listening is probably like, wow, that sounds great. And it sucked. And if you're in a corporate job right now and you're thinking, man, if I could just get to the next tier, like I could just be a bigger manager or a C-level exec or like whatever, I tell you, you're probably not finding happiness there. And if you do, maybe you're still entrepreneurial, meaning that there are other things you can go do, and you can get some of the stuff started on the side. You can get some of the stuff started on the weekend. You can go get some investors together and tell them, hey, I'm the money and you're the guy that's going to go do it. There's lots of ways to enter this stuff and evaluate it for your own situation. I know it's not a short answer, Brian, but I just really want to encourage people to think about what is holding them back, and then address that concern the way that works for them and allows them to go do something. Because in the end, like I was saying before, when I'm on my deathbed, I'm not going to be thinking about my days in a high profile CEO job. I couldn't care less, literally couldn't care less. And what I'm going to be thinking about are the lives that I affected for people, and the good times that I had in charging my own battery, which is to be entrepreneurial and to help other folks on this path, which is also why I've created the Diversified Income Experiment. Why I just put it all out there, man. I just tell everybody exactly. So if you can't find real facts, like I couldn't when I started these businesses, I said, if I can ever put this stuff out there and let people know the answers to this stuff, I'm going to do it. And so that's what the Diversified Income Experiment's all about. And we just share all the brutal facts.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because I really love that you're so transparent with the numbers and the information, because you're right. It is hard to find concrete information on how to start these different types of businesses. And the fact that you're sharing this information, I think, is really important and of great value. So please tell our listeners how they can find out more about you and also where they can go to find out a lot of this information that you're sharing.
I've got a website, and the funny thing is I've built this website. I had someone build it on ClickFunnels, and I'm a big fan of ClickFunnels, but it's super expensive. And I'm not really trying to charge a whole lot for stuff. And so it turns out just to be an expense for me, and I turned it off. But you can always reach me. So that website is DINCPI. It stands for Diversified Income Passive Income Experiment, DINCPIE.com. DINCPIE.com, DINCPI. But you could also reach out to me through harry@dincpi.com. And I get those emails and I respond to all of them. And I hear from folks. People also, reach out to me through Keith Leimbach on, through LinkedIn and whatever. I hate LinkedIn, but it's an okay way to reach me. But harry@dincpi is probably the most effective. And I get feedback from people like from all walks of life. And I know that this is having an impact because people share that. You probably hear the same thing, Brian. And that's the most rewarding thing to me, to know that I'm helping someone understand some things that might help them live a better and more fulfilling life. And so if I can help any of you guys listening, feel free to reach me at harry@dincpi.com, DINCPIE.com.
And who is Harry?
That's my middle name.
Okay.
I like to tell people, I answered that too fast, Brian. Yeah. A lot of people think it's my assistant, my virtual assistant. And I get lots of emails say, "Hey, Harry, can you let Keith know that I listened to his podcast? I'm really interested in what." And I get a laugh. I get a kick out of it because people don't know they're going right to me. It's just a con.
A secret revealed here.
Yeah.
Well, Keith, this has been such an awesome conversation. I've really enjoyed talking with you about the ins and outs and the financials and just compelling reasons to invest in laundromats, hair salons, car washes, and really think differently about creating long-term wealth and cash flow. Thank you so much for taking us there and sharing all this great information with us. This has been great.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I'll follow up with you soon.
I want to thank everybody for listening to this episode. I'm your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group, and you can find out more about me by going to higinvestor.com. That's HIGinvestor.com. And you can also ask questions and join us on Facebook by going to RPOA, Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast. This episode was sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And RCB & Associates, helping real estate investors and small business owners navigate the complex world of health insurance and Medicare benefits at rcbassociatesllc.com.
You've been listening to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association. You can find out more at rpoaonline.org. If you enjoyed this podcast, please go to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review.